Hello and welcome to another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers. This is the show where we try to answer your questions, which you can send to us via email on awa@ancient-warfare.com, via the forum at romanarmytalk.com, or you can become a patron at patreon.com/ancient warfare podcast, and you can support the show and even get a subscription to the magazine included in your support as a reward for your supporting our show, and you can tell us your questions. And Nathan has done so. I forget which way he has used. Presumably, he's a patron. I don't know. Murray, do you know?
I think he is.
With me, by the way, Murray Dam, assistant editor of Ancient Warfare magazine. My name is Jasper Orthuis, editor of the magazine. Sorry, I completely forgot to talk about who we were. We're just focused on that Ancient Warfare content stuff. We don't matter. But today we're going to talk about Thureophoroi, the shield, the doorstop carriers.
Yes. Right? Oh, there you go. You've taken some of my answer.
I'm sorry.
That's quite all right.
Go ahead. Go talk about the men who carry the Thureos.
So you have the Thureophoroi or the thyreophoroi, depending on how the Greek is transliterated, either with a U or a Y. And the singular is a Thureophoros. Anyway, they are men who are carrying a oval shield with a boss and a central spine. And it's a fascinating development. So one of the reasons for the doorstop joke is, of course, that the word can mean door, an oval-shaped door, or just becomes shield and shield carrier. But the interesting thing about them is that they appear in Hellenistic armies in the 3rd century BC. What they are is debated because they either come from the Gallic invasions of the Balkans and then Greece and eventually Asia Minor by the Gauls under Brennus in the early 3rd century BC, Battle of Thermopylae in 279 BC. They obviously have Gallic shields and therefore introduce that oval shield to the Hellenistic armies, and that's then widely adopted. Another version is that at exactly the same time, and this obviously makes it very tricky for us to differentiate where it comes from, you've got Pyrrhus's invasion of Italy to help Tarentum in 280 BC. And the other argument is, of course, that he may have either used allies amongst the Italian populations who also had already adopted an oval shield, and so therefore said, well, these are good, I'll use them too. And the third version is again with Pyrrhus fighting Romans who are using oval shields going, well, they work well, I'll use those. Now, those are all complicated by the fact that under the Hellenistic system, under Pyrrhus and then the other successors in Greece, Asia Minor, and even down to Egypt under the Ptolemies, the phalanx is still the primary heavy infantry formation that they use right up until they are conquered by the Romans. And so in the Hellenistic adoption of the Thureophoroi, they are light-armed troops. They seem to replace the peltast, and the oval shield seems to have additional benefits on top of the small peltast shield that the Thracian and Illyrian peltasts used to have. Some people say that the Thracians and the Illyrians adopted the oval shield first, and that they were then the reason for the influence on the Hellenistic armies. We're not sure. They guard the flanks of the phalanx. Try saying that 3 times quickly. And so they are kind of like a flexible, light-armed troop for the Hellenistic armies who have javelins and stabbing spears, but they are not heavy infantry. And so some commentators would like to see them as an attempt by Hellenistic armies to compete with Roman armies and have these oval shielded infantry be heavy infantry, or at least be flexible infantry who can fight with javelins and then form a shield wall and become like a phalanx. That doesn't seem to be the role that they were given. The role they seem to be given is to, as I say, they're posted on the flanks, left and right of the phalanx, and the phalanx is still expected to do the heavy lifting when it comes to Hellenistic armies, even to the point where the Achaean League basically abandons the the Thureos and goes to a Macedonian model of the small round shield, also called the Pelte, which again is one of those problems for our sources, that a shield is a shield is a shield is a shield. Even Ammianus Marcellinus uses aspis. In the late Roman Empire, you've got a shield being described as either an aspis or a clipeus or a scutum, which are, for us, they're different types of shield, but to them, they're just shields. It's the word for shield. I'm throwing it in there, but that's a specific kind. No, apparently it wasn't. So we might be getting tied up in knots where there's no knots to be tied up in.
We like to see models and official classifications for everything.
I came across one passage where it's like, you've used 3 different words for shield in this one passage. That's really confusing to us.
But as editors, we know that people who use the same word 3 times in one paragraph, we want to change it up because it reads more. And it could well be the same argument.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the shift F7 argument of the ancient world. That's your thesaurus function. Those of you who don't know what shift F7 is. Okay, so it's really interesting because I think you're never going to get to the bottom of the mystery as to where does it come from. You could possibly say that the Romans adopted themselves after the Gallic invasions of the 4th century, the Battle of Allia and the storming of Rome in the 4th century BC, that they see the efficiency of the Gallic shield, the oval Gallic shield, and therefore that becomes adopted by them. That again is another controversy as to where that came from. But it's tricky to know whether it's come through the Gallic invasion or through Pyrrhus's experiences with either the Romans or his own allies in the Italian peninsula. What happens, however, is the shield is adopted in a widespread manner across all of the Hellenistic kingdom. So our best evidence from funeral stelae of Thureophoroi is actually from Sidon and Alexandria. So these very quickly make their way into Egypt and the Levant. So they're clearly being adopted and used throughout the Hellenistic kingdoms. But then the interesting thing about the Hellenistic kingdoms is there very much is a keeping up with the Joneses kind of attitude amongst the Hellenistic armies, that they're all trying to outdo one another with the same kinds of troops, better equipped, more of them. So the idea that this new troop type or this new equipment is quickly adopted by multiple states is actually in keeping with what they've done elsewhere. So we find these, exquisite depictions of these. And then there's some later who might be wearing heavier armor. Off the top of my head, is it the Thyreophoroi? A heavily armored Thureophoros. Thureophoroi. Is it the same troop type, or is it a heavy infantry version of this troop type? Again, the jury is out. So, they fought as light armed troops. We're not sure who they are, whether they're recruited from the traditional Peltast recruitment grounds. So you've got Thracians and Illyrians especially, but others as well. They're certainly not the glamour. They're not the glamorous heavy infantry phalangite to that point. So you're still wanting to be a phalangite if you're in a Hellenistic army. And they seem to kind of fall out of favor in the 1st century BC. So after the Hellenistic armies have been defeated by the Romans at Cynoscephalae and Pydna and other battles, it seems as though the Thureophoroi basically drop out of use and tend not to be used. And
then we get the mysterious legionary imitation type troops, which may or may not be.
Well, well, the problem is your imitation legionary can look very much like Thureophoroi because it's, what's the differentiation? And again, our sources don't necessarily tell us. We're looking at normally visual evidence and even reading source material and going, they're fighting this way, therefore they're this thing. But the sources don't go, this is a thing and this is this thing, and they look exactly the same. We don't get that. So it's one of those frustrations of the incomplete nature of our sources. But that's half the fun, really. Exactly.
But perhaps not the most satisfying answer always.
No. Exactly. But we'll have to leave it there. We know they existed, but we don't know exactly how their nuances operated.
Thank you very much.